It was Julius Nyerere who said, "Without unity, there is no future for Africa." Hello and welcome to it. This is #Africa. I'm Duduzile Ramela. This week, the United Kingdom Minister of State for Africa, Harriet Baldwin, was in the country for a two-day state visit. She sat down exclusively with #Africa to talk about the repercussions of leaving the European Union and how South Africa and the rest of the continent will be impacted. Ms. Harriet Baldwin, thank you so much for joining us here on ENCA. So almost a year into the position. As you crisscross the continent, how are you settling into the post?
Well, as the UK's Minister for Africa, it's a great time to be in the post. It was so exciting last year that the Prime Minister was able to come to South Africa and made a series of really great announcements. It's a very exciting time because we're having a big UK-Africa investment forum back home later this year, and we are very excited that the UK is already the #1 investor in South Africa, and I think there's huge scope for us to do more trade, do more business, do more people-to-people contacts with such a strong bilateral relationship. Of course, also South Africa is now sitting on the Security Council with us, and as the two Commonwealth members on the Security Council, I know we've got a lot of shared issues that will be progressing, and so it's going to be a very exciting time to be working together.
Right. Before we get into our trade relations, I'd like to quote Prime Minister Theresa May saying, "Brexit means Brexit." With your imminent departure come March 29, are you confident that you will meet the deadline?
Yes, we've legislated for that. So it's on the statute books that we're leaving on the 29th of March. But as you know, it's the withdrawal agreement that we've negotiated with our friends and neighbours in the EU, where Parliament this week said that they wanted to leave the European Union with the withdrawal agreement, but there's one small section where we still need to see some minor changes because we all share the objective of leaving with an open border like we have today between Ireland and Northern Ireland. So Parliament's given a clear steer to the Prime Minister to go back and just, if we can sort that out, it will get ratified in our Parliament and we will leave in a smooth and orderly way on the 29th of March.
Talking about all things smooth, what kind of a deal are you hoping for Britain? A soft deal, a hard deal, or no deal?
So the government wants to see us leave with the withdrawal agreement, which represents a very smooth and orderly process where we have an implementation period during which we can negotiate new free trade deals, including with our friends and neighbours in the European Union.
Right. So we spoke a little bit earlier on, or you alluded to it, our very strong trade relations with Britain. What will that look like with the UK outside of the European Union?
So the plan is, and we're in the final stages now of actually finalising that. The plan is that we copy across what we currently have in terms of the Economic and Partnership Agreement and use that as a platform for us to then negotiate down the line a bilateral free trade agreement that takes into account the fact that South Africa has so many amazing products that we love in the UK.
Right, and of course we export in agriculture, mining and manufacturing. When we speak about permits and licenses, given how long it takes to negotiate agricultural permits in any market, how will this be looked at post-Brexit?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that these things don't happen overnight, but I think there's common ground in terms of both countries want to see freer and use the current arrangements as a platform for taking things forward into our shared future together.
Of course, we're not an island, South Africa, that is. We are part of the Southern African Customs Union with the Kingdom of Lesotho, Botswana, as well as Eswatini, amongst others. How will this region be impacted post-Brexit?
Well, we're really excited. I mentioned what a great time it is to be Minister for Africa. We're reopening high commissions in both Lesotho and Eswatini. We're building out our diplomatic footprint across Africa. We're going to have the largest diplomatic network of any European country in Africa. We have such great bilateral partnerships, not only with our Commonwealth friends, there are 19 countries in Africa which are members of the Commonwealth, but also strong bilateral relationships elsewhere. And then, of course, as a member of the United Nations Security Council, we're very involved involved in many of the peace processes, and we share objectives with the South African government to see a greater role for peace and security across the continent. We want to work constructively in terms of the women, peace and security agenda as well. So there's a huge amount of common ground and shared objectives in terms of progress in Africa.
Right. You mentioned the United Nations Security Council, and there's been a growing call amongst African leaders for at least one African country to get a permanent seat. Yourselves, along with the United States, as strong allies, when are you going to call for at least one country to have a permanent seat from Africa on the Security Council?
Well, we do recognise that as the world evolves, institutions need to evolve. It's a very important institution, and of course in our role as a permanent member we play a key role in that, and we do value very deeply the role that the 3 African countries that have seats designated on the Security Council play, and we look forward to working very closely with South Africa during their time on the Security Council.
I'd like to get your thoughts and reflections. South Africa has gone through a very rough period over the past 10 years. The new dispensation that is about to come in with President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking about renewal and revival. What have you made of the efforts that are being done to turn the tide in the country?
Well, what we recognise is that South Africa is a strong democracy with a constitution, rule of law, and that we know it's an election year here in South Africa, and we know that the South African people will have a vibrant and vigorous democratic discussion about their future choices, and it's up to the people of South Africa to decide on those choices at the elections.
Absolutely. I'd like to also get your thoughts and reflections. The issue of land redistribution without compensation in South Africa is almost a done deal with the new dispensation coming in, just a matter of changing legislation. What have you made in terms of the process and how it's played itself out in the country?
Well, as I said, we believe that a legal, democratically led process that is done through institutions is incredibly important. And I know that South Africans will want, as they go through those choices that they're making democratically, to ensure that at the same time it doesn't send signals to international investors, because I know that South Africans want to see continuation of the strong inward investment that's been into South Africa, that's created a lot of jobs, a lot of employment. I know how important the economy is to people in South Africa. So there's a balance to be struck there in terms of those signals that it does send internationally.
We often hear in the media that investors may be worried, or there may be jitters. Are investors in the UK worried?
I think investors in the UK can see that this is an economy with great potential. As I said, we are the #1 investor here, and I think we respect the fact that it's a constitutional process, that it's a democratic process, and one governed by the rule of law.
When we look at news from our neighbours who had their election last year, Zimbabwe that is, during the current World Economic Forum that just passed a few weeks ago, there have been calls for sanctions to be lifted in that country. Do you echo the calls?
Well, what I would say is that we very much called for elections last year in Zimbabwe, and there were international observers there who I think saw that they were freer and fairer and peaceful elections. What has happened since, though, in the August 1st events, and then more recently since the fuel price protests, is that we are very concerned that there's been a disproportionate reaction from security forces to what happens in democracies, which is that people protest about different things. And so we are calling on the government in Zimbabwe to rein in those security forces, to react proportionately, to ensure that the rule of law is observed and the democratic institutions are allowed to follow through in terms, and of course the judiciary are able to follow through in independent taking forward of those cases, because we've heard really distressing reports of indiscriminate use of live ammunition. We've heard of opposition people being targeted in their homes. This is not the kind of thing that you can afford to do if you want to be seen as a democratically legitimate government. It's terrible. So we're calling on the president to follow through in what he said he will do, and his own programme of reform and the recommendations from the Commission that's reported on the August the 1st incident as well.
Right, so all eyes this year on two big economies on the continent, Nigeria and South Africa, heading to the polls. What are you looking forward to the most, especially in Nigeria?
Well, we absolutely hope that in Nigeria that there will be free, fair and peaceful elections, and it's going to be vibrant disagreements, just like in any democracy like my own. And the key thing is that we don't want to see any incitement to violence from the political actors. We want the decisions of the Nigerian people to be taken in peace and in a democratic way.
Harriet Baldwin, thank you very much for chatting to us here
on
ENCA.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for this edition of Hashtag Africa. Do stay tuned to ENCA for all the latest news. Take care and goodbye.